twist.
The problem is a fire in a coal mine that's been burning now for 30 years.
Song of despair about Centralia, Pennsylvania, her home of 66 years.
In the morning of May 7th, 1962, the Centralia Borough Council met in the Town Council building to discuss arrangements for the upcoming Memorial Day preparations. It was an important annual day for the town, and each year, members of the American Legion would form a color guard and march from the cemetery to cemetery, firing volleys to honor the fallen soldiers. The town council was meeting to make sure everything was in order before the big day. Among other things on the agenda, one of the items was to take care of the large landfill behind the Oddfellow Cemetery that was causing a foul odor. To get rid of the trash and smell, they made a unanimous decision that would seal the fate of the town in decades to come. This is the story of the underground coal mine fire of Centralia, Pennsylvania. Centralia was a thriving mining town with over 2,000 residents, homes, schools, churches, restaurants, and movie theaters. The town was located in the Columbia Country in northeastern Pennsylvania. It was first established in the 1860s during the coal mining boom and has thrived ever since. The town was surrounded by old abandoned mining pits dating back to the early days of mining. These pits were often illegally used as dumping grounds for the town's trash. A few years earlier, in 1956, the Pennsylvania government enacted a new law to regulate the use of old mine pits as dumping grounds. According to the new law, municipalities could use these pits to dump trash, but they had to apply for a state permit and allow regular inspections from a regional landfill inspector. One such old pit was located just behind the Oddfellow Cemetery at the eastern edge of the town. It was first excavated by Edward Whitney in the late 1920s and later abandoned in 1935. The pit was 100 feet long, 75 feet wide and 50 feet deep. 2 months before Memorial Day, in March 1962, George Segeritis, the regional landfill inspector for the State Department of Mines and Mineral Industries, inspected the proposed pit for landfill use. When a coal pit is excavated in an area that has old mining tunnels underground, the pit cuts through them and they appear as holes in the pit walls and bottom. Segeritis instructed the Centralia municipality to fill the holes at the bottom of the pit with incombustible material before he could issue the permit. This was important because these holes were notorious for causing underground mine fires in Pennsylvania. Councilman Joseph Teig, who handled landfill matters, reported in the March 5th meeting notes that 5 more holes had been sealed. The landfill inspector was happy with the council work and issued the permit number WD443 to use the pit as a landfill. This seemed like a routine matter, but a small oversight on the part of the inspector would lead to the ultimate destruction of the town. After the permit was issued, Centralia municipality was allowed to use the old mining pit as a landfill. On May 27, 1962, the council borrowed a front-end loader to scoop up trash from other illegal dumping sites around Centralia to the newly designed pit. After all the trash was in one place, they asked town volunteer firefighters to light it up. Burning trash was illegal in Pennsylvania, but it was a common practice back in the 60s. Usually, it would be a controlled burn, and firefighters would douse the fire site after the trash has been burned fully to mitigate any fire hazard. The trash burned for hours, and the firefighters doused the site completely and called it a day thinking the fire had been extinguished. But they were wrong. 2 days later, on May 29th, George Jones, president of the cemetery trustees, saw smoke coming out from a corner of the cemetery. He reported this to the council, and they hired the firemen again to douse the pit. However, landfill fires can keep smoldering beneath a pile of trash, so they hired a bulldozer to stir up the trash when the fire returned a week later. When they moved the trash aside from the northern corner of the pit, they saw something horrifying. At the base of the north wall of the pit, there was an unsealed hole 15 feet long and several feet high that led to the mines underground. It was hidden under the pile of trash, and even the mine inspector failed to notice it. While the council sealed most of the mine holes inside the pit before applying for the permit, they overlooked this one. And the fire needed just this one path to reach the coal-rich mines underground. The Centralia Council was now worried, as they saw a possibility of a mine fire, but they were not sure if the fire had spread into the mines yet. They called a professional mine firefighter named Clarence Kashner to come and examine the pit and the hole that led to the mines underground. Kashner was experienced with mine fires and was often called for such emergencies in nearby counties. He inspected the pit and concluded that the mines underneath had been exposed to fire through the unplugged hole. He telephoned the authorities at the Department of Mines, Minerals and Industries in Pottsville and told them of the danger of a full-blown mine fire if immediate action was not taken. He offered to dig up the burning material with a steam shovel for $175. Gordon Smith, the engineer at DMMI, told Kashner they won't be able to approve the budget without going through a proper channel. A quick bureaucratic decision and $175 could have saved the town decades of horror and ultimate destruction. But Gordon Smith was a stickler for rules. In mid-July 1962, the landfill inspector visited the site again and measured the mixture of steam and hot gases coming out of cracks inside the pit and detected carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is commonly produced inside mines when coal burns in an environment with less oxygen. Now there was no doubt that the mines under Centralia were indeed on fire. While the council was writing to the state government bureaucracy for help in fighting the underground fire, the fire slowly but steadily spread further and deeper into the labyrinth of mines. The Centralia mines were rich in anthracite coal, known for its high carbon content, which helped in maintaining and spreading the fire underground. Most underground coal reserves appear as horizontal veins. However, Centralia's coal deposits were different due to its mountainous landscape. They are in the shape of concentric bowls when viewed in cross-section. The four principal coal veins under Centralia, known as the Buck, 7 Foot, Skidmore and Mammoth, are separated by 30 to 150 feet of rock. They dip steeply from south to north and rise sharply to the opposite anticline. The fire initially spread to the Buck vein near the south end of town, about 350 yards from St. Ignatius Elementary School. 300 yards downhill to the north were the first homes of East Park Street. The fire slowly traveled down through the Buck Mountain vein. The underground drainage tunnel built during the peak of mining in the 1890s provided ample oxygen for the fire to consume. Other sources of fresh oxygen were several bootleg tunnels that cut through different cross-sections. Even if all openings were sealed, the fire could draw oxygen through the earth via numerous small cracks to the surface. The fire slowly spread through the veins due to hydrogen explosions and wet coal conditioning. When anthracite coal is heated, it releases hydrogen that accumulates inside the mine and produces an explosion. The intense heat also conditions the wet coal several feet ahead, making it dry and ready to burn when the mother fire reaches there. This keeps the fire going even when it hits wet areas underground. The fire that mainly started in the Buck's vein will spread to other veins via numerous conduits and set the entire underground Centralia on fire. In summary, there was no easy way to stop the fire once it spread underground. Kashner could have stopped the fire during its early days had the DMMI approved the $175 project, but bureaucratic red tapes didn't allow that. The fire was slowly spreading inside the numerous coal seams, and the town council was making efforts to quell it. but life in Centralia was going on with blissful ignorance of what was building up under their feet. Unlike most fires that rage and burn everything in their path quickly, mine fires spread very slowly. It can often take years before their significant effect can be felt above ground. In August, nearly 2 months after the Memorial Day, the state official, town council members, and local coal company owners met again to discuss the mine fire that had stopped operations inside the mines. Alonso Sanchez, a local strip mine operator, made an offer to the county officials to dig out the fire on his own for free if he was allowed to keep the coal that he had dug out during the process. He proposed to do boreholes at different locations to ascertain the perimeter of the fire, then dig out the area to stop the propagation. But again, the state officials denied his request and decided to collect open bids through official channels. In later years, the residents of Centralia will see this as a second missed opportunity to put out the fire while it was still relatively small and extinguishable.
They were within days of putting out the fire, and because of the bureaucracy, they ran out of money. They had to open it up to bids. 3 months goes by, the fire spreads, and then they don't have a viable way to put it out after that.
For the next few years, everyone forgot about the fire, and no new efforts were made to do anything about it. So far, the fire had not created any considerable damage, apart from some smoking vents around the town, and people just stopped taking it seriously. As the 70s went on, the community found itself divided. Some people believed that the government was exaggerating the threat to push for evacuation, while others grew increasingly concerned about the risks of living atop a burning ground. Until one day in 1979, something happened that would change the fate of the town forever. John Coddington ran a local gas station along Locust Avenue. In 1979, almost 17 years after first ignition, John was routinely checking the temperatures of his underground fuel tanks, and he made a chilling discovery that would expose the true extent of Centralia's underground inferno. While checking the temperature of his gasoline tanks, Coddington was shocked to find the fuel had reached a scorching 147 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 25 degrees above normal storage temperature. The extreme heat in Coddington's tanks proved that the fire had spread dangerously close to Centralia's infrastructure, posing an immediate threat to public safety. Suddenly, the invisible danger lurking beneath their feet became all too real for the residents of Centralia. 2 years later, in 1981, a 12-year-old kid named Todd Domboski nearly plunged to death in his grandmother's backyard when a sinkhole appeared right under his feet. Fortunately, he was able to grab an exposed tree root to avoid the fall and was pulled out by his cousin Eric.
Administered oxygen. They rushed me to the hospital for some blood gas tests. I was just covered in mud. From the intense heat, I had heavy pants, heavy shirt, a heavy coat. It was baked on. I mean, you couldn't go to a car wash and blast me off. It was just baked on.
If he did not hold on to those roots, he would have slid down a gangway or down the slope, which was about 300 feet in depth. And if I recall, the temperatures recorded were anywhere from 400 to 600 degrees at the bottom of the hole.
These two incidents shattered any illusion of safety among the town residents, and people started discussing abandoning their homes for good. In 1983, after nearly 21 years of the first ignition, the US Congress allocated over $42 million to relocate the residents of Centralia. This massive financial commitment marked the beginning of the end of the town. As part of the relocation effort, approximately 500 structures, including houses and other buildings, were demolished. But not everyone was eager to leave their homes, and some people chose to stay. In 1992, the Pennsylvania government invoked eminent domain, which meant that now the state owned the land. The remaining residents in town went to court against this one-sided action, and after a long court battle, a settlement was reached that allowed the remaining residents to live out their remaining lives in their homes, after which the state would demolish them. As of 2024, only 5 residents are still living in Centralia, a haunting reminder of the thriving mining town that once stood there. The last mayor of Centralia, Carl Womer, passed away in 2014, and the remaining 5 residents have been managing their own affairs since then. The fire ravaged Centralia, destroying everything below and leaving a smouldering ghost town above. More than 60 years have passed since the 1962 Memorial Day fire. Today, driving through Centralia feels like traversing an overgrown field until the cracked pavements and remains of buildings reveal its past. The roads of Centralia are now paved with memories of the past and not dreams of a future. Streets lead to nowhere. Broken sidewalks are overtaken by weeds, and smoke seeps from the ground, presenting a haunting reminder of the fire still burning below. The Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary Ukrainian Catholic Church is the last structure that still remains. It was fortunately built on top of a rock instead of underground coal. It was declared as a pilgrimage site in 2015 and continues to hold weekly services attended by people from nearby towns. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to our channel. See you with the next story.